Good day, Kavibal, and welcome to our Learn at Home Facebook Live. For the discussion today, the topic will be on strengthening online education, addressing diverse needs through differentiated instruction. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions on the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, Kavibal. And now, to proceed with our webinar this evening, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. Mr. Joram Kim Corcuera is a graduate of Bachelor in Secondary Education, major in English at the Philippine Normal University in 2011. He obtained his Master of Arts, major in Communication degree at the Ateneo de Manila University. Currently, he is taking his degree of Doctor of Philosophy, major in English Language Studies at the University of the Santo Tomas. He has been a teacher for almost a decade and has already taught English, literature, public speaking, and research classes. He also represented the Philippines in various international research conferences about education and communication. He has been delivering CPD training sessions and teacher seminars across the country for more than 3 years. He is also into journalism as he has already experienced handling a number of student publications in various schools and universities including San Beda University and University of Santo Tomas. At present, he is working as a faculty member at the University of Santo Tomas Junior High School, where he teaches communication arts and journalism courses. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Mr. Joram Kim Corcuera.
All right, so good evening to everyone, to all our viewers today. Of course, maraming salamat po sa pagtutok, of course, sa Vival. I hope that today's session would be fruitful and, of course, would be useful as you, of course, explore the different strategies and different things that we can implement in online learning. So allow me now just to show to you, of course, the PowerPoint that I prepared for our webinar. All right. So with the sudden transition, okay, from traditional learning to online learning, it is inevitable for us not to encounter problems with our classes. Indeed, everyone, of course, lahat tayo, be it from the parents, teachers, the students, all of us, of course, are on the process of adjusting to the new normal. Some of us might be having difficulties in terms of using different forms of technology. Some may be really stressed with regards to finding solutions to our poor connectivity. Some of us might be having some problems in trying to establish rapport, connection with the students. And some might be dealing with some issues in terms of not being able to maximize the potential of online learning. Okay? So if you have watched the previous webinars in Vibal, and of course, I'm pretty sure you already read a number of researches about online learning, you would know that, of course, according to these researches, online learning fits the learning preferences of our students. Considering that our students nowadays, of course, are members of the Generation Z. And we all know that if we talk about Generation Z, it would always be technology. In fact, they are not just digital natives, because they're also known, of course, for having innate skills in terms of using and maximizing, of course, the use of technology. Okay. So through online learning, indeed, there is no doubt that we will be able to create personalized learning paths to address the diverse needs of our students. But the question is, how are we going to make this possible? Diba? So this is one of the questions, or the main question, that we're going to answer in our webinar today. Okay, we would try, of course, to show how we educators can use differentiated learning to address the different needs of our students. Okay, so once again, I am I am Joram Corcuera, of course, a graduate of the Philippine Normal University and of the Ateneo de Meril University. And right now, of course, just like what Miss Enano mentioned earlier, I am working as a faculty member at the University of Santo Tomas. So indeed, again, allow me to welcome you to our session entitled Strengthening Online Education, Addressing Diverse Needs Through Differentiated Instruction. All right. So if this is not the first time that you actually watch me sa mga webinars ng Vibal, so I always start with what I call the quote of the day. Pero since ngayon gabi na, ngayon I'm only given an hour, of course, to talk about the topic. I decided to call it quote of the session. All right? So today's quote of the session comes from Thomas Jefferson. Sabi niya, there is nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of the unequals. For how many years as students before and nowadays as teachers, this has been our sad reality. Admit it or not, we are living witnesses of the inequality promoted by the one size fits all instruction. And unfortunately, may sadly, until now, this kind of instruction, of course, still exists. Indeed, I know that as teachers, mahirap naman talagang i-address lahat ng diverse needs ng mga estudyante natin, considering that, of course, they're discrete individuals. But still, as educators, we should always give it a try because the future of our students lies in our hands. And if we won't help them become the best versions of themselves, then talagang mahihirapan po sila. I know it's going to be very challenging, but I'm pretty sure that this is nothing compared to the many challenges that we are facing nowadays in the field of education. All right. So before we formally define what differentiated instruction is, before we discuss the concept about differentiated instruction and how we can apply it to online learning, let us first have an activity. So I'm pretty sure familiar naman po tayo lahat sa Mentimeter, right? So for this specific Mentimeter activity, we are going to put the specific traits of the students that we have nowadays. So in other words, ilalagay po natin dito yung mga specific characteristics na magagamit natin to describe the students that we have. Okay, so please go to www.menti.com and use the code 554279 and 8. And again, ilalagay lang po natin would have to be the descriptions or the characteristics, the traits of the students that we have nowadays. So of course, we cannot put all the traits, di ba? Pero generally, yung mga estudyante natin ngayon, in one word or in a phrase, paano ba natin sila i-describe? Okay? So again, please go to www.menti.com and use the code 554279 and 8. Okay, ayan, may naglagay na po, brainy. So siguro we can allot like 2 to 3 minutes to wait for the answers of course of our viewers. Okay? So may naglagay ng brainy. What about the others? Okay, sige po, antayin po natin sila. Ayan. Diba, of course, our students are different from one another. Sabi nga natin, discrete individuals, may iba-ibang pangangailangan, may iba-ibang gusto, diba? Pero of course, meron pa rin lumilitaw talaga na talagang yung trait talaga ng generation nila. Of course, considering that all of them are members of the Generation C. Alright? So isa pa lang po ang sagot na nandito. So I'm waiting for the others. Again, please go to www.menti.com and use the code 5542798. Ayan, may naglagay na. Brainy, individual, intelligent, deep, smart, ano pa po? Ano pa kaya ang pwede natin gamitin para i-describe ang ating mga estudyante ngayon from elementary, even preschool, junior high school, senior high school, or even college, di ba? Ayan, need attention, unique individuals, smart, ayan. Meron pa ditong creative, ayan. So para sa mga first time gumamit ng Menti, ayan, bigyan natin ng onting tips kapag gagamitin natin. Kapag tayong teachers, we would not be going to menti.com. We're going to mentimeter.com para makreate natin yung mga word cloud na ganito. But for students, they would be going to menti.com and of course, they would be using the code that would be generated from your own Mentimeter. So baga galing sa account ni teacher, kagaya ng ginagawa natin ngayon. So this is a free application that you can use, 'di ba, for your classes as well. All right? So again, Ayan, siguro let's wait for 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, we'll already try to process the answers that we have here. Pero so far, pag nakita nyo, sir, bakit hindi pantay-pantay ng laki yung mga salita? Because in Mentimeter, the bigger the word is, it means that the more persons or the more individuals actually answered the said word. So, dahil mas malaki yung creative dito, ibig sabihin, mas marami yung estudyante, ay mas marami rather yung taong nagsagot ng salitang creative. So, pag smaller, ibig sabihin, mas fewer yung nagsagot nun. Okay? So, more often than not, kapag maliit na maliit, kada pwedeng isa lang yung nagsagot, or if not isa, dalawa lang, and then like. Alright, so now let's try to process. Okay, so to read some of your answers, sabi dito, sir, nowadays, I would describe my students as active, ay hardworking, techy, okay? Intelligent, eager, brainy, skillful, diverse, nice, unique, experimental. They need attention. Pero nang ibabaw dito yung creative and yung smart. Ako po, indeed, I have to agree with your answers, di ba? Pero looking at the word cloud, we would be able to come up with one conclusion, that we have different descriptions for our students, na meron tayong iba't ibang klaseng estudyante. Some of us would say na, ay, sila sir, sila yung tipong techie. Some of us would say, ay, sila yung tipong eager. Some of us would say, sila yung nangangailangan ng attention and the like. So only shows that indeed, we have discrete and diverse set of learners. And bakit po ito ganun, di ba? It's primarily because our students, just like what I told you earlier, they're different from one another because they are exposed to different cultures. Okay? So iba yung kinalakihan nila. And with that, of course, we can actually say that they have different set of beliefs, cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, practices, of course, that influence their human behavior. Alright. So right now, of course, na nasa online classroom tayo, di ba? Di ba? And of course, today, online classrooms can provide the means, okay, to address the demands of students with different needs. Specifically, of course, we can use online learning, okay, of course, to address and to use, of course, to utilize, to maximize the use of differentiated instruction. Online learning can be an ideal environment for differentiation because teachers will be able, of course, to customize and personalize the way students access information, vary the course spacing for individual students, and quickly assess the manner in which individual students or even as a group demonstrate understanding of the content. Okay? So furthermore, pag sinabi nating online learning, di ba, ibig sabihin nun, the students from different parts of the world, the students of different countries are connected, di ba? Sabi nga nila sa picture, pag nakita nyo, iba't ibang lokasyon, pero lahat yan nako-connect, of course, through online learning. So in other words, it is inevitable not for the teachers to encounter or to meet students, of course, who have different cultures, multiple cultures, right? Kaya nga, di ba, sabi nila, dapat talagang as teachers, hindi lang tayo academically profession, kailangan alam din natin, of course, kung paano na irespeto, of course, ang different cultures ng mga estudyante natin. Alright? So, however, the downside here, okay, ang ganda, di ba, nako-connect. May estudyante ka from Pilipinas, may estudyante ka, for example, ngayon na nasa USA, may estudyante ka na nasa Japan. So, lahat sila umaattend isang klase. It's really nice. But the downside there is that, okay, in this online kind of setup, students with very advanced learning skills, okay, they are combined with students who might be struggling mightily, okay, with one or more school subjects. In other words, pwede yung mga sobrang advanced, sobrang talagang fast learners, mako-combine sa talagang medyo problematic and challenged individuals. Okay? At the same time, of course, yung children with different cultures or even different religions are mixed, di ba? They are combined in one class, which could result, of course, to some difficulties and some conflicts, right? So, online education, di ba? Ayan, ito tayo ngayon lahat, di ba? So, in reality, when you talk about online education, di ba? Yes, it's true. Very promising, okay? Pero kapag online education, ang nakakalungkot, karamihan sinasabi, pag online education si teacher magbe-video, isa-send lang, and then that's it. Right? Kadalasan kapag mag-synchronous, magla-lecture lang si teacher. Okay? This is a sad reality because many of the students, okay, will always encounter a teacher, okay, who will treat all first graders or all second graders, all grade 7, all grade 8, grade 9, as if they're essentially the same. In other words, lumalabas tayo sa one size fits most instruction, primarily because sa tingin ni teacher, hindi ko naman sila nakikita. So how would I be asking questions? How would I be knowing their needs? Di ba? So ginagawa na lang ni teacher, okay, isang video na lang, send na lang. But the truth is that that's not the promise. Okay? Kumbaga, that's not the way to maximize online education. If we want, of course, to maximize online education, then we must be able to prove that online education supports, okay, the technique, the idea that it is a way to be able to address the diverse needs of the students. Okay? And of course, this can be done through differentiation. When you talk about differentiation, it is knowing the learner, assessing the learner, adjusting the assignments, right? Adjusting the assignments, of course, through it can be reflected through your questioning strategies, and even, of course, through your curriculum approaches. Okay? In other words, in any general education classroom, okay, always remember that there are students with various learning needs. Okay? Some of them would learn best through reading. Some of them would learn best through writing. Okay? Others would prefer watching videos. Others would prefer listening to recordings. Others would prefer having an online conversation with the teacher. Others would prefer answering things in a discussion board. Diba? In a discussion board. So, indeed, differentiated instruction is a way of teaching that matches a variety of learning styles. Kanina nag-activate tayo, nag-mentimeter tayo, proving that our students have different learning preferences because they're different set of individuals. Okay? So, resulting, of course, to the demand that we should be able, of course, to address them as well. Okay? The challenge of addressing the different needs, the different preferences, the different wants of the student, in other words, the academic diversity, in today's virtual classroom is as important, of course, in choosing the best instructional design for the students. Okay? So, in other words, mahalaga po yun, my dear teachers. I'm not saying na gawin natin araw-araw. Sabi ko nga nung nalaman ko na ito ang ito ko today, sabi ko, you know what? Ang trabaho natin as teachers in an online setup, napakabigat. And doing differentiated instruction would make it even heavier. Okay? But while I was preparing this PowerPoint presentation, I was realizing, hindi pala, no? Kumbaga, technically, sabi ko nga parang, the question is, how would I make it, how would I make the webinar not only informative, but also persuasive for my educators, for my co-educators, for my co-teachers, to actually implement differentiated inside the classroom. Okay? So I hope sana ma-achieve ko yan. Di ba? Sana ma-achieve natin yan. But for now, let us try to define first, what is differentiated instruction? Differentiated instruction may mean teaching the same material to all students using a variety of instructional strategies. Teachers who use differentiated instruction tailor their teaching approach to match their students' learning styles, their students' preferences, okay, the learning needs, okay, and all the students, of course, have to remember, lahat naman yan, they have the same learning goals. However, for us to help them achieve these learning goals, sometimes our approach should vary para at least matulungan natin sila ma-achieve, of course, yung mga learning objectives natin. Okay? So, furthermore, when we talk about differentiated instruction, it may require the teacher to deliver lessons at varying levels of difficulty based on the ability of each student. So instead of using a one-size-fits-all approach, a teacher may use actually a variety of methods to teach. Pwede siyang, for example, magturo in small groups. Pwede siyang magkaroon ng one-on-one session. Pwede magkaroon ng, let's say, for example, group them according to their skills, group them according to their interests, and then like. And another one, moreover, differentiated instruction means tailoring instruction to meet individual needs. Indeed, there is no doubt that students have multiple options for taking in information, in making sense of ideas, and of course, in expressing what they learn. So the more, of course, na talagang makikita natin yung halaga, yung significance, of course, ng differentiated instruction in today's society. Always remember, my dear teachers, my dear educators, my dear formators, to make these practices more widespread, to move from differentiation in individual classrooms to differentiation that is pervasive throughout schools and school districts. Okay? It requires strong and skilled leadership. So dapat holistic talaga yung approach natin. At the end of the day, it is of course true that many teachers have already begun to use differentiated instruction. A lot of educators have expanded, of course, the use of DI, okay? The practices of DI, and of course, its principles, right? So let's try to dig deeper about differentiated instruction, okay? Sabi dito, differentiated instruction is not the same as individualized instruction. Alam niyo po, teachers, kung sasabihin niyo sa akin na ang differentiated instruction ay individualized instruction, obviously, hindi talaga yun kaya. Di ba? Let us try to, kumbaga magkaroon tayo onting backtracking, di ba? 40 years ago, Tomlinson, of course, one of the proponents or one of the specific key persons with regards to this specific strategy, sabi niya, the focus of DI before was on individualized instruction. But then the teachers, the administrators, they realized that creating an individual learning plan for each student is impossible. Diba? It's not really realistic. Hindi talaga yung kaya. Okay? That is why differentiation or differentiated instruction, okay, uses several learning approaches. Okay? And it does not require an individual approach for each student. So, hindi totoo yun. Okay? Although, of course, there would be times wherein magkakaroon ka ng personal attack, lalo na kung talagang struggling yung bata. But it's not necessary that you do it all the time. Okay? Remember, all students have access to the curriculum in a variety of ways. And this makes the whole learning experience more effective. Right? Second, differentiated instruction allows students to show what they know in different ways. And differentiated instruction works well in general education classes that include students and learning and thinking differences. Indeed, just like what I mentioned to you earlier, DI or differentiated instruction is a way of teaching, okay, where educators plan, of course, to address the students' differences so that all students can learn at their best. Kumbaga talagang personalized learning path, personalized approach, okay? In a differentiated classroom, the teachers divide their time, their resources, their efforts, of course, to be able to create a plan, okay, where they would be able to address the different backgrounds, the readiness, and the skill levels together with the interests of all students, okay? So to summarize what differentiated instruction is, allow me to focus or at least present to you briefly this specific graphic organizer. So according to this graphic organizer, malinaw na malinaw, okay, differentiated instruction is a teacher's response to learner's need, guided by principles of differentiation such as one, respectful tasks, two, flexible grouping, three, ongoing assessment and adjustment. Okay? So, pag sinabi natin respectful task, ibig sabihin task na fitting for their level, task fitting for their interest. Flexible grouping, it can be homogeneous or heterogeneous. Diba? Ongoing assessment and adjustment. So, ang assessment, napakahalaga po talaga sa DI kasi this is the only way that you will be able to check if you're achieving your goals or not as a teacher. And of course, if your students are able to meet the learning objectives as well or not. Okay? So, teachers can differentiate through content, process, product, or even learning environment. Ito po, i-discuss natin yan mamaya. According to the student's readiness, interest, and learning profile. Of course, to a range of instructional and management strategies, such as, for example, yung jigsaw, di ba yung sa jigsaw, para ikot-ikot sila na one group to the other, multiple intelligences, varying organizer texts, interest centers, literature circles, and then the like. Okay? So, of course, pag sinabi natin DI, gaya nung nabanggit ko kanina, lahat magsasabi niyan, DI is multiple intelligences, di ba? So indeed, this is one of the key concepts that you can use, of course, in differentiated instruction, okay? In 1983, an American developmental psychologist, of course, in the person of Howard Gardner, described 9 types of intelligence, okay? So, according to him, sabi niya, one, naturalist, understanding, living things, and reading nature. Ito yung mga tinatawag na nature smart. Musical, discerning sounds, their pitch, tone, rhythm. Diba? Sila naman yung tinatawag na sound smart. Okay? Logical, mathematical. They are known, of course, for quantifying things, making hypotheses, and proving them. Ito naman yung mga batang tinatawag na number smart or reasoning smart. And then, of course, yung ating existential, tackling the questions of why we live and why we die. Ito naman yung mga tinatawag na life smart. Okay? Interpersonal, sensing people's feelings and motives. Okay? Also known as people smart. Okay? Bodily kinesthetic, of course, coordinating your mind with your body. Ito naman yung tinatawag na body smart. Okay? Linguistic, finding the right words to express what you mean, or the word smart. Okay, intrapersonal, understanding yourself, what you feel and what you want. Self-smart. And spatial, of course, visualizing the world in 3D or picture smart. So multiple intelligences is one of the many ways, okay, that you can consider, of course, in making specific groups to implement differentiated instruction. Right? So, marami pa pong ways ng pag-group ng individual. So, mamaya ipapakita ko sa inyo yung different strategies na pwede natin magamit. But right now, allow me to focus on the three parts of differentiated instruction. Okay? So, the first part of differentiated instruction, ang tinatawag nating step 1, is of course figuring out what students know. Teachers, of course, can help the students learn through pre-assessment. Ito pong pre-assessment, sa online, madali itong gawin. Diba? Kasi sa face-to-face, kadalasan, magsasagot ang bata sa pen and paper, sa natin check-checkan. It's very time-consuming. In online, you can use our own learning management system. Pwede tayong gumamit ng iba't ibang applications, of course. Andyan ang Google Forms, Quizzes, even Kahoot, di ba, na pwede natin gamitin, of course, to have pre-assessment. Because it is very important for us to know ano bang level ng estudyante para at least alam natin kanino natin siya isasama. Second, of course, creating different lessons and activities to match each student's level and interests. So for step 2, of course, this task may be daunting. And it is necessary to help students learn, di ba? So for instance, sabihin natin kunyari, one student is struggling to identify what the noun is. Okay? Yung isang estudyante naman, talagang master niya na yung concept talaga ng noun. So in other words, kailangan natin magbigay, of course, ng different activities which would be able to address, of course, the needs of the student. Student 1, of course, would be needing activities to understand what a noun is. And student 2, of course, would be something deeper, okay, which is also, of course, about nouns. So both students can achieve success on their own terms and, of course, based on their own goals. So that is the second step, of course, of differentiated instruction. Third step, of course, is assessment or assess each student's growth. Gaya nung sinabi ko sa inyo kanina, assessment plays a very important role in differentiated instruction. Okay? Assessment can be created to see if the students meet their discrete goals. Okay? And if they found the success with that goal, then consequently, ibig sabihin nun, they have learned something. They were able to acquire the knowledge. They were able to develop the skill that they need. Okay? And this allows, of course, both the teachers, the students, and even the parents, diba, to be able to celebrate academic success or individual strengths. Right? So those are the three parts of differentiated instruction. But right now, the question is, how do we really implement it? Paano ba natin siya ini-implement, of course, sa isang klase? Okay, be it in a brick and mortar setup or even in a virtual class. First, of course, would be grouping. Alam nyo po, napakahalaga nito. Remember, when we talk about grouping, we know that students can be grouped, number 1, by ability level. Sabihin natin magkakasama lahat ng slow learners, ng average learners, or even ng fast learners. We can group them by interest or by, of course, yung multiple intelligences. We can also group them by intermingled levels of understanding. Pwede natin pagsamahin yung mga medyo nadadalian sa medyo nahihirapan. Di ba? Why? Because if we would be grouping students with similar levels, okay, ang ibig sabihin nito, syempre, sabay-sabay nila matututunan yung lesson, di ba? Pero pag intermingled yan, they can help one another. Those fast learners can help the slow learners or the struggling learners to be able to understand specific concepts, okay? So students with better understanding of the lesson, okay, indeed will be of help to the students who are struggling to understand and to master the specific content and skill. So this makes, of course, groupings this summarizes, or this really show why grouping plays a significant role in differentiated instruction. Number 2 is varying amounts of time. So varying amounts of time or changing the tasks, okay? The third one, okay? These are great alternatives to grouping. So pag sinabi nating varying amounts of time, we have to understand that some students, they would just be needing 5 minutes to answer a 20-item exam. And accuracy-wise, mataas ang scores nila. But some students would be needing an hour to answer a 20-item exam, yet hindi pa rin mataas ang scores nila. Di ba? So to be able, of course, to address their different, kumbaga, learning styles or their different, the different levels of their capabilities, their abilities, okay, we can also, of course, change the amount of time, vary the amount of time. Okay, and third, again, change the task. So this would allow you, of course, to be, kumbaga, to implement more personalized way of educating your students. Okay? So like for example, kunwari final project, hindi yung isang output lang talaga. Kumbaga for example, pwedeng yung output, kunwari reflection paper. Yung isa, sabi natin magaling kumanta. So ang gusto niya, yung kanang reflection paper, gagawin niya sa pamagitan ng pagkanta. Pwede, why not? Yung isa, for example, reflection paper, ang gusto niya, magaling siyang sumayaw. So he wants to show his reflection through dancing. Okay, the other one, let's say for example, magaling magsulat. So he wants to express his reflection through writing. And then the other one, let's say for example, through speaking. Okay? So as long as we would be able, of course, to get the specific content that we need, kumbaga achieve the skill, the learning competencies, we can also allow them to be, we can also allow our students to be a bit more creative. Okay? Kasi nga, options are always a great way to keep students engaged. And of course, in a way, it also inspires creativity. Okay? So right now, of course, since this is a Learn at Home webinar, okay, some of you might be asking, sir, paano naman magagamit yung Learn at Home kits? Di ba? Sabi ko nga po sa inyo kanina, our students, of course, have their own ability level. May mga struggling learners, may mga fast learners. So through this specific Learn at Home kit, uh, yung textbook natin, yung booklet natin, and then the other, of course, things that are included in this kit can be used, of course, as supplementary activity for those who are struggling. And of course, as enrichment activity as well, advanced, lalo na para sa mga advanced learners. So, tandaan natin itong, of course, Learn at Home kit, kompleto po yan. May English, meron din, of course, for Filipino, meron din, of course, even for MAPE, for AP, for math, and of course, for science. All right? So, if you want to avail these books, again, you just need to go to Bival's website and of course, check this out. So, para at least, kumbaga hindi rin tayo mahirapan gumawa ng additional exercise because this textbooks, this specific kit really contain a lot of exercises that you can use, of course, to enrich or to supplement the learning of your kids. All right? Right now, let me discuss to you the different student characteristics that students, the teachers rather, can use for differentiation. Sabi dito, number one, readiness, di ba? So, to differentiate in response to student readiness, a teacher constructs tasks or provides learning choices at different levels of difficulty. So, paano to nagagawa? One, of course, you can adjust the degree of level of difficulty of a task to provide an appropriate level of challenge. Di ba? So, pwede nating, kumbaga, i-vary yung uh, uh, level of challenge natin sa bata, level of difficulty na binibigay natin sa bata. Remember, napakahalaga din po, of course, that we teachers would continuously challenge our students para hindi din sila nabobore. Kumbaga talagang andun yung challenge nila and of course, would inspire them to keep going and of course be better. You can also try to, of course, remove teacher or peer coaching. You can let them use manipulatives, presence or absence of model for a task. Okay, this can also be done, of course, by making the task more or less familiar based on the proficiency of the learner's experiences or skills for the task. And of course, for varying direct instruction by small group needs. So indeed, pag sinabi natin readiness, okay, nagbabari yan. So this is something that we should be considering, of course, in trying to implement a differentiated instruction. Number two, of course, bukod sa readiness, syempre yung interest nila. Di ba? Mahalaga yan. So to differentiate in response to student interest, a teacher aligns key skills and material for understanding from a curriculum segment with topics or pursuits that intrigue students. Okay, for example, there might be some students who can learn, for example, literature through music. Diba? There might be some students who can understand literature through comics, through, for example, yung mga drawings and then the like. Okay? So, of course, this would reflect their interests. Okay? So ano po yung mga ways para at least ma-maximize natin yung itong interest nila in terms of implementing differentiated instruction? One, of course, we can use adults or we can use peers with prior knowledge to serve as their mentors in an area or shared interest. Lalo na kung hindi natin ganun forte. Kunwari, for example, we're teaching araling panlipunan. And then, syempre, sa araling panlipunan, may mga practices, mas gusto nila makilala yung, for example, yung isang tribe na to sa pamagitan ng mga sayaw. Eh, you're not a good dancer. So you can ask for the help of your peers, some adults, of course, na may prior knowledge doon, who are, of course, sharing the same interest with the students. Second, of course, by providing a variety of avenues for student exploration of a topic or expression of learning. So, avoid natin yung nilalak natin sila sa isang paraan ng pagkatuto. Okay? Providing broad access to a wide range of materials and technologies, lalong-lalo na sa online. Ito yung ganda ng online eh. Sometimes, even if you are not going to give it, they may search it on their own. But of course, it would be better if the materials would be coming from the teachers. So, simple na lang naman ang gagawin natin. We just have to search it, of course, online at makikita naman natin yun doon. Of course, this would really help our students become more engaged and become more motivated to participate in our class discussions. Last, of course, we have your encouraging investigation or application of key concepts and principles in students' interest areas. Of course, by creating specific activities where they would be able to apply, kumbaga, what they learn using, of course, kumbaga, at the same time, rather, utilizing yung kanilang interests. Okay? So, combination yan ng academics and interest. And of course, number three would have to be their own learning profile. So, pag sinabi natin learning profile, to be able to address this, in differentiated instruction, okay, a teacher, of course, based it one on students' talent, two intelligence profiles, di ba? So, some ways to do it. One, of course, creating a learning environment with flexible spaces and learning options. Lalo na, for example, minsan kasi, di ba, pag fast learner ka, tapos nakikita mo nahihirapan pa yung mga klase mo, the tendency is that nababagot ka. You tend to not enjoy the lesson anymore. You're being bored. If nahihirapan ka naman, for example, medyo struggling tayo, tapos yung mga klase mo nasusundan lahat sa teacher, ano nangyayari? Nabo-frustrate naman tayo. Okay? So that's why a learning profile is also being considered. Okay? So presenting information through auditory, visual, and kinesthetic modes, encouraging students to explore information, ideas through auditory, visual, and kinesthetic modes, allowing students to work alone or with their peers. Okay? So ensuring a choice of competitive, cooperative, and independent learning experiences, balancing varied perspectives on an issue or topic, and providing authentic learning opportunities in various intelligence or talent areas. In other words, again, personalized learning based, of course, on their preferences, on their abilities. Okay? Kaya nga tinawag na learning profile. Okay? Always remember that differentiated instruction or differentiating instructions is the best way to meet each individual's student's needs. And when you talk about addressing these things, it is always, of course, through personalized learning, okay? That we would be able to address the diverse needs of the students, all right? So now, allow me to show to you and discuss to you the various principles that govern effective differentiation. This comes from Carol Ann Tomlinson and Susan Demersky Allen. So sabi nilang dalawa, one, a differentiated classroom is flexible. Okay? So both teachers and students understand that time, materials, modes of teaching, ways of grouping, students, ways of expressing learning, ways of assessing learning, and other classroom elements are tools that can be used in a variety of ways. Of course, ito yung mga bagay na pwede natin gamitin. One, to promote individual success. And second, of course, to promote whole class success. So in other words, when we talk about flexibility in differentiated classroom, hindi pwedeng si teacher fixed mindset. Okay, dapat kapag gumagawa tayo ng lesson, we're trying to imagine also, paano kaya natin siya magagawang personalized? Sometimes you would be teaching a lesson differently sa bawat klase mo. Di ba? Lalo na kung magkaiba talaga, for example, yung interest na pinapakita ng mga sections na hawak mo. Okay? So, no to fixed mindset, yes to personalization. Second, according to them, differentiation of instruction stems from effective and ongoing assessment of learner needs. Okay? So this principle also reminds us of the tight bond that should exist, of course, between assessment and instruction. Hindi po pwedeng differentiated instruction lang tapos walang assessment. In fact, even assessment can be personalized. Pwedeng differentiated assessment din. Okay? So as teachers and as educators, it is a must for us to know what to do next, okay, when we recognize, of course, that the students are having a hard time trying to understand the lesson. Mahalaga po yun, right? So, we're also primed to teach most effectively if we are aware of our students' learning needs and interests. In fact, in a differentiated classroom, a teacher sees everything that a student says. Kasi kapag sabay-sabay sila, one size fits all, minsan di mo talaga maririnig lahat, di mo talaga mapapansin lahat. But when it's personalized, of course, one, mas onti sila, and of course, they find it more interesting, so we have to expect that the students would be more responsive. Okay, so that's why when I talk about teachers who are implementing VI, they're really more effective kapag aware sila kung ano yung pangangailangan and interest ng mga bata. Okay? Again, let me just reiterate, assessment is the key to successful implementation of differentiated instruction. Okay? Third, flexible grouping helps ensure student success to a wide variety of learning opportunities and working arrangements. Okay? So differentiated classrooms utilize whole class, small group, and individual exploration. Pag sinabi mo natin whole class, buong klase. Small groups, pwedeng around 3 persons per group, 4 persons per group, and then the like. Or we can also have, of course, individual explorations. Okay? So in a flexible group classroom, a teacher's plan student working arrangement that vary widely and purposefully over a relatively short period of time. Okay? That is why nakadepende rin sa atin sa teachers kung ano yung nakikita nating bagay sa activity. Let's say, for example, kung yung activity natin, videos, ano man gagawin? Whole class ba? Or small group ba? Iba bang video ipapanood natin sa isang grupo, dun sa isa, para talagang fitting talaga sa kanilang abilities, fitting talaga sa kanilang interest, or would it be watched by the entire class all at the same time? Okay? So groupings can be based on their readiness, academic needs, interest, and learning patterns. So, for example, similar readiness, ibig sabihin, lahat ng bata na pare-parehas ang level, magkakasama. Pag mixed readiness, we can put, of course, the students na iba-iba yung strengths nila. And of course, ang nangyari, pag nagsama-sama to, they will be able to share the strengths to their classmates or to their peers. Okay? Pwede rin natin silang pagsama-samahin sa like interest. Kagaya nung mixed readiness, ganun din. Of course, they would be able to at least show their strengths, of course, which could be seen, of course, through their interests as well. So, meron din, of course, yung similar learning patterns, or pwede na namang in random lang. Like, for example, magbilang kayo, count 1 to 5, di ba? Minsan, for example, kung sino lang magkatabi para mas mabilis. So, this would be the different ways that we can use, of course, in grouping them. So when we talk about grouping them, of course, I'm pretty sure you're seeing right now a figure showing some of the ways of a teacher, okay, that that the teacher can consider in grouping his students. Okay, so the figure shows the possible grouping combinations that can be achieved by mixing all the options between levels of the three-tiered diagram. Right. So flexible grouping used consistently and purposefully has a variety of benefits. So kumbaga, pag hindi tayo palagi, for example, random, yung talagang, for example, nagagamit na ma-maximize natin yung iba't ibang ways ng grouping, na ma-maximize natin, of course, yung pagpili ng tamang way ng pag-group sa isang activity. Okay? This, of course, would result to a lot of benefits. Okay, one, it gives us the opportunity to carefully, of course, target teaching and learning. Okay, so makita talaga natin kung na-hit talaga natin, of course, yung ating learning objectives. Okay, it also gives us access to all materials and individuals, of course, access to all materials and individuals in the classrooms. A chance for students to see themselves in a variety of contexts and rich assessment data for the teacher who actually auditions each learner and a wide range of contexts. Okay, that is why it is also very important for you to vary the style of groupings that you actually implement in your classes. Kaya ako, to be honest, I dedicate time. I really allot time to choose the best way to group my students for a specific activity. Okay? So number 4, all students consistently work with respectful activities and learning arrangement. Kanina, I already defined respectful. Ibig sabihin, fitting, di ba, sa kanilang abilities. Okay, so every learner must have tasks that are equally interesting and equally engaging, and which provide equal access to essential understanding and skills. In differentiated classrooms, a teacher's goal, of course, is to ensure that each child, challenge or not, okay, would be their needs would be addressed all the time, okay, and that each child finds his or her work appealing most of the time, okay. So differentiation does not presume a different task for each learner. Hindi to individualize palagi, okay? But rather, it provides enough flexibility, okay? In task complexity, working arrangement, modes of learning expression, that varied students find learning a good fit much of the time. So hindi naman ibig sabihin na kailangan ang differentiation automatic o iba activity ni student A, iba activity ni student B, hindi. Pwede mong iba-iba, for example sa isang sa grupo, sa groupings, pwede sa learning environment, pwede sa material na binibigay mo sa kanila, and then the like. So differentiation exists in different modes. Kaya nga po sinasabi flexible. And number 5, the last one, students and teachers are collaborators in learning. In differentiated classrooms, teachers study their students and continually involve them in decision making about the classroom. As a result, students become more independent as learners. So, while the teacher is, of course, clearly the professional who, number one, of course, prescribes what the learners need, facilitates learning, design activities, students in differentiated classrooms as well plays a very important role. Of course, kumbaga, sila yung tinatawag nating critical partners in the success, of course, ng ating discussion. Success for the part ng teachers na natuto ang mga bata, and success sa part ng mga bata mismo, of course, that they are able to acquire the knowledge and develop the skill stipulated, of course, in the curriculum guide, of course, provided by the Department of Education, or siguro ngayon, of course, yung ating most essential learning competencies. Okay? So that is why dapat natin tandaan, differentiated learning is not all about the teachers. It's not all about the students. Okay? Mahalaga po ang role ng students at mahalaga po ang role ng teacher sa differentiated instruction. Okay? So furthermore, when I talk about differentiated instruction, paano nga ulit ito gumagana? Again, one, small work groups. Okay? So pwede dito yung jigsaw. For example, student in each group rotate in and out. Diba? Yung for example, this gives them a chance to participate in many different groups. So umiikot-ikot sila. Parang may iba may tawag dyan yung mga living museum and then the like. So possible that, sir, hindi naman magagawa yan in online, no? Magagawa po natin yan, of course, through the use of breakout rooms, di ba? Familiar po tayo sa breakout rooms, yung mahahati sila sa iba't ibang grupo, tapos pagkatapos, pwede silang mag-meet as one and they would be sharing their work to the whole class afterwards. So that's one way, of course, of differentiating instruction. So pwede natin, kunyari, for example, may tuturo tayo ng literature. Ina-analyze natin, kunyari, yung elements ng story. So, pwede isang grupo, for example, pupunta sa kanila yung plot. Tapos sa plot, kunyari, meron silang onting drama monologue. Drama monologue. I mean, meron silang onting, for example, may drama show sila or radio drama. Yung isang group, pwede, for example, team sila, pwede silang, kunyari, gusto nila, kakanta sila, singing. Yung isang group, character analysis, gusto nila, drawing sila. So, yun yung strength nila. So, pag iwa-iwalay mo sila, breakout groups, sila magkakasama, may interest, and then afterwards, they would be having their presentation as a class. So, dito po, as one class, i-discuss na nila yung mga natutunan nila. Okay? So, kung yung mga ginawa nila, i-represent na nila. So, of course, ito po yung one way, of course, of showing differentiated instruction. Okay? That's, of course, is reciprocal learning. So, in reciprocal learning, sometimes the students become the teacher, okay, sharing what he has learned, and asking questions of his peers, di ba? Ako, I always do this. Talagang hinahayaan ko ang mga bata maging critical thinkers, okay? We have to give them, of course, kumbaga, chances to be able, of course, to practice their critical thinking. Okay? And last, of course, is continual assessment. Again, teachers regularly monitor students' strengths and weaknesses. So, titignan din natin, for example, yung weaknesses ba nito? Siyempre, kung weakness at the start of the year, dapat at the end of the year, as much as possible, hindi na yan weakness. And yung strength, of course, dapat would remain a strength. Kumbaga, mas strengthen pa natin. Okay? So, assessments, of course, allow us, educators, to ensure that our students are progressing well in their knowledge and, of course, mastery of schoolwork. Okay? So now let me show to you, okay, the different areas where teachers can differentiate instruction. So one, of course, would have to be the content, the process, the products, or the learning environment. Okay? So differentiated instruction shakes up the traditional classroom. Sabi nga ito ni Tomlinson, ni Carol Tomlinson. Students have multiple options for taking in information, making sense of ideas, and expressing what they actually learn. Okay? Kaya nga po, sabi nila, okay, apat yung areas na pwedeng pumasok on differentiated instruction. One would be the content. So pag sinabi natin content, it is trying to figure out what the students need to learn and which resources will help him do so. Okay? So for example, kunyari, ina-identify mo for example yung different facts, concepts na ibibigay mo for example for a specific group and varying it to the other. So that is of course differentiated instruction in terms of content. Next of course will have to be the process. So for the process, it refers to activities that help students make sense of what they learn. Products is a way of students to show what they actually know. And learning environment, how the classroom feels and how the class works together. So for us to better understand itong four concepts na to, allow me to briefly show to you and define to you itong four areas po na to. Ayan. So hindi ko na po babasahin na nasa ating PowerPoint presentation because it would take a lot of time and I only have 5 minutes left before 8 p.m. Pero pag sinabi po natin content, again, it consists of facts, concepts, generalization or principles, attitude, and skills related to the subject. Okay? So it includes both what the teacher plans for students to learn and how the students gain access to the desired knowledge, understanding, and skills. So in other words, if we're changing the content of the lesson, okay, automatically it involves how the students gain access to the information. So as teachers, we can have differentiated instruction by modifying the content, okay, dun sa kanilang learning styles, different senses to each lesson. So pwedeng for example, simulan natin yung lesson through videos, okay? Simulan natin for example yung lesson through hands-on activities and then the like. Okay, dito rin pumapasok yung tinatawag natin isang practice na for example, reading class. Kunyari reading class tapos ang topic natin about history, okay? So pwedeng iba't ibang level ng reading ang ibibigay mo. 'Di ba? Parang for example, reading na mas madaling intindihan para sa medyo struggling learners, reading na mas complicated para sa mga fast learners and then the like. Okay? So that's content. Next would have to be the process. Okay? The process, of course, refers to how the learner comes to make sense of understanding and owning the key facts, key concepts, key generalizations, and skills of a subject. In other words, dito po yung activity. Dito, alam niyo po pag sinabing process sa differentiated learning, kadalasan, flip classroom. Alam niyo po yung flip classroom, di ba? Literally flipping the role of homeworks and lectures. So lectures will be done at home through videos, pre-recorded videos. Assessment would be done in school, of course, which allows the teachers to personally address the different needs of the students. Kasi di ba mas nakakaikot si teacher kapag nagkakaroon ng activity sa loob ng klase. So that is another way, of course, of differentiated instruction. Kasi iba't iba yung mabibigay mo sa kanilang assistance, intervention. Okay? Third, of course, would have to be the products. Yung iba ang tawag dito, projects. Okay? So we use this term to refer to the items a student can use to demonstrate what he has come to know, what he has come to understand, and be able to do as the result of an extended period of study. So of course, alam naman natin to, di ba? Products, di ba? Ito yung, for example, portfolio, or kanyari yung mga performance tasks, and then the like. So a good product, of course, would make students rethink what they have learned, apply what they have learned, apply the skills that they have developed, extend their understanding, and then the like. So for us to be able, of course, to implement differentiated instruction and products, kailangan syempre mas creative yung ating task. Hindi yung tipong we're expecting one similar output from all the students. Okay? We have to develop a task where we give the students a chance to make choices for their final products. Okay? Okay, for their final, for the kumbaga, final outputs, yung kanilang tinatawag na product. Kumbaga, after all the skills na develop nila, ano yung ma-develop nila sa dulo, yun yung, kumbaga, for example, for artists, pwedeng for drawing ang kalalabasan ng kanila. For example, for singers, pwedeng kantang ang matatapos nila. For example, for writers or for journalists, pwedeng write-ups ang kanilang ipapasa. But then again, of course, you have to ensure that you are still able, of course, to assess and of course target kumbaga yung learning competency mo na planado mo talaga, of course, in your learning plan. And lastly, of course, would have to be the learning environment. So modifying the learning environment for differentiated instruction can be as simple as allowing a student to work in a quieter environment. Diba? Let's say, for example, minsan, sir, sa labas kami, mag-group activity. O sige, sa labas kayo. That's already differentiated instruction. Okay? So, iba mas gusto nakaupo. Iba mas gusto nakaupo sa silya. Siguro ngayon medyo mas mahirap to, di ba? Kasi nga online. Pero siguro we can also allow them na yung iba mas gusto through chat, yung iba mas gusto through video call, yung iba mas gusto, of course, using the LMS. We can also allow them, of course, to explore the different learning environments. These things may sound simple, but still, they help the students to feel more at ease, okay, which will really help them to accomplish the task more efficiently and more accurately. Alright? So, syempre, kapag mas komportable sila pumili nun, of course, what we expect? Nothing but the best. Okay? So, always remember, differentiation is more than a strategy or series of strategies. It is a way of thinking about teaching and learning. And indeed, as teachers, if we would only be able to understand the nature of our art, okay, more fully and more deeply, okay, I'm pretty sure more differentiation would likely evolve, of course, from that understanding and from that realization. So this is the end of our webinar today. I hope you were able to understand do insights or concepts with regards to how you will be able to apply differentiated instruction in your online classes. Ayun lang po. Thank you po. So I believe we'll be answering some questions. Am I right, Miss Michelle or Miss Jillian?
Thank you very much, sir. Now we will proceed to the question and answer portion. Our first question is from Ann Ibasco. How can students who are learning English use their home language in a personalized classroom?
When we talk about English kasi is our medium of instruction. Ako, I always believe that, let's say for example, if, let's say, kunwari, talagang hindi talaga sanay mag-English ang bata, if we would always adjust, kumbaga talaga sa kanya, tatagalugin natin, translate natin lahat, the tendency is that, one, the entire class would suffer. Diba? Lalo na in an online class, talaga minsan 30 minutes lang, minsan 45 minutes mo lang mamit ang klase. Kung ilang minuto pa mauubos sa translation, lalo talaga mahihirapan yung wag madadama yung buong klase. So ako po pag ganito, one, we can give additional exercises to mga differentiated instruction. We can give additional exercises for that kid, but not really kumbaga too much changes, implement many changes during synchronous classes. Kasi during synchronous classes, the students must also understand that she also needs to learn. Okay? But then, of course, as a teacher, for you to be able to address the needs of the students, you can provide specific activities that they can answer, or you can also provide special tutorial sessions para at least talaga makapag-adjust sila at matutunan din nila, of course, yung language na ginagamit na require, of course, stipulated dun sa memorandum ng Department of Education. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is from Dolori Tabunara. How can I differentiate the process of student learning in my subject?
Medyo mahirap sagutin yung tanong niya kasi hindi ko alam kung ano yung subject niya. So, but then again, gaya nung sinabi ko kanina, when we talk about differentiation, marami pong paraan, di ba? One, differentiation na napakasimple sa learning environment, differentiation sa klase ng activities na ibibigay mo, differentiation sa outputs na hihingin mo sa kanila. It could be differentiation na pagsasama-samahin mo lahat ng fast learners, pagsasama-samahin mo lahat ng nag-struggle, or pwede rin namang imimix mo sila para at least they can assist one another and the like. So the kind of technique that you are forced to utilize for a specific kumbaga attempt to implement differential instruction would really depend dun sa lesson na ituturo mo. Ayun, Ms. Kilian.
Thank you very much, sir. That's all the questions we have for now. Any last reminders for our viewers for today po?
Last reminder, siguro ako, honestly speaking, online learning is not easy. Indeed, it is very challenging. Talaga namang, kumbaga, hindi nauubos ang trabaho, okay? But I hope we would be able to find the right combination to make it really work for our students. If the others were able to make it work, I'm pretty sure kaya din natin to ma-maximize. And of course, let's try to do our best to use online learning to address not only kumbaga yung academic needs ng mga bata, but of course to be able to maximize the potential na talagang ma-develop talaga ng bata lahat ng skills at ma-acquire nila lahat ng knowledge of course that they need for the specific for this academic year. Ayun lang po.
There we have it. In behalf of Ibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this very eye-opening and insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, sir. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Don't forget to register to get your e-certificate of participation. We also encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Vival Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.